Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky, all the football you love in one place. Across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.
Alright, welcome back. It is Thursday's Off the Ball. Everton have just scored against non-league Bournemouth in the FA Cup. Solomon Rondon with the goal just before the hour mark. That is in the 5th round of the FA Cup at Goodison Park. So Everton leading by a goal to nil. If they go on and they win that, they will play Crystal Palace in the quarterfinals. Liverpool away to either Nottingham Forest or Huddersfield. Middlesbrough against Chelsea. Southampton against Manchester City. Gavin Cooney of the 42 is in studio. How are you?
Very well, Nathan. Thanks very much.
We're going to talk Republic of Ireland because we're thinking there's a lot going on with a lot of Irish players, good and bad, that we haven't really focused on because we have this long fallow period of nothingness, and in a couple of weeks' time, we're at some stage over that week between the games against Belgium and Lithuania, we're going to be talking about Irish football of the last 20 years and how it's all gone so horribly wrong, and doing that deep dive that we do every time an international thing comes around. And then we go back to our normal life once again. But there is quite a few interesting things. Obviously, Caoimhín Kelleher has taken all the headlines, and we're in such a wonderful position as to whether it'll be Kelleher and Bazunu. Like, that is going to be fascinating in so many different ways. Firstly, because it's totally out of Stephen Kenny's hands as to what happens at club level. Like, this could flip by next September, where maybe Liverpool decide Caoimhín Kelleher, you go on loan and he's playing Premier League or high championship football. Maybe Manchester City bring Gavin Bazunu back, and he's not getting any football. And then in the middle of it all is Mark Travers playing week in, week out in the Premier League next season with Bournemouth.
It's quite conceivable that Travers is the only first choice Irish keeper in the Premier League next year. You know, he's doing... Again, it's gone quite under the radar, and if we ever ask Stephen Kenny to effectively praise one of his goalkeepers, he lists off the ones that aren't playing, and he always reserves high words of praise for Travers, who has, in fairness to him, bounced back extremely well from the nightmare in Belgrade. You know, he played poorly in that game and got chipped by Mitrovic and quite embarrassingly, and then lost his place to Bazunu against Luxembourg, and the rest for Gavin Bazunu, and everyone following the Irish team is history. But Travers has ensured that he hasn't been consigned to history. He's been playing extremely well for Bournemouth. I mean, no one has kept more clean sheets in the Championship than him this season. They look like they have a pretty good shot at promotion. They did recruit a goalkeeper over the January window whose name now escapes me, but you see that and you're wondering, oh no, they're not going to kick Travers out, are they? But no, he's stayed in goal. And he's just been really solid. Like I won't.
Well, he's been man of the match in 4 consecutive games.
Yeah, no, he's been great. I mean, I say solid because I don't want to nerd you out too much with statistics, but if you look at the expected goals conceded, the goals that you would expect him to concede, he's outperforming that ever so slightly. Now, not by any massive metric, but he is obviously playing very, very well and has been trusted by Scott Parker and Bournemouth, and quite conceivably now will be a regular in the Premier League next year.
Yeah, there's going to be a few tests of Stephen Kenny's selection policy, which by and large I think he's come around to. I'm not going to pay massive attention to club position, but with goalkeeper is definitely one that, even though Bazunu has done nothing, like, he's been an absolute revelation. As we say, if he's not playing first team football for a considerable period, like, God, he's in such a strong position though, with like 3 of the best young keepers in English football right now.
It's outrageous, And like,
what have we been doing right? Like, we spend so much time talking about what we don't do right in Irish football. Where's the deep dive on what we're doing right for producing all these unbelievable goalkeepers? Is there a guru out there that we don't know about?
We must genuinely be, genuinely there must be nations in Europe glancing our way and wondering how on earth we're producing all these goalkeepers. And you could say maybe it's typical of Irish football to look that we have depth in the one position in which you can't play more than one, unless obviously Caoimhín Kelleher came through, and we all read and
still lack goals,
and many of us wrote the features over the weekend of Caoimhín Kelleher formerly being a striker at Ringmahon Rangers. So unless he's repurposed, I was going to say David James style, what Stuart Pearce did with David James, but hopefully with more success at Irish level. But no, Bazunu has the jersey, but it's all circumstance. Kelleher was probably in line to get that jersey when Randolph was injured at the start of the World Cup qualifying campaign, but was injured at a pretty luckless time. So in came Travers, and then Travers didn't perform against Serbia, so in came Bazunu. He has performed. There's absolutely no reason for Bazunu to come out of the Irish team at the moment. And the fact that Kelleher is there putting so much pressure on him is a good thing, ultimately, in terms of keeping Bazunu on his toes and keeping him at a pretty high level of performance.
We're still 2 weeks away from Stephen Kenny naming a squad for those friendlies against Belgium and Lithuania, and I can't imagine he's going to do a huge amount of rotation. Particularly that Belgium game actually is a huge opportunity for Ireland in terms of world ranking points. If Belgium aren't bringing the big guns, you get a result there. The effects of that can linger for quite a while. Defensively, if he's looking at other options, well, maybe even before we look at the other options, like Shane Duffy has had this massive renaissance, and we celebrated this. And we sort of ignored the fact that for the last 2 months, Shane Duffy hasn't been getting a game.
Yeah, it stalled a little
bit.
bit.
To a crushing halt.
There have been injuries in there to complicate it, but he did return and play in that awful Brighton 3-0 loss at home to Burnley. Conceding 3 goals at home to Burnley. And there was a bit of a set too between Shane Duffy and his goalkeeper, Robert Sanchez. There was a bit of a very obvious disagreement on the pitch, which earned a mild rebuke from Graham Potter. Now, I think Graham Potter only does mild rebukes. I don't think he goes any further than mild, but did say, yeah, it probably didn't help, but was then on the bench again against in that defeat to Villa most recently. And, they played 3 centre-halves. He was dropped in a team that wasn't exactly laden with centre-halves. They had Cucurella, who usually plays left wing-back. He played at the left of the back 3, and Veldman, who had a terrible game. Came in
that's
and
the most worrying part. Cucurella, in fairness, is an unbelievable fullback.
Yeah.
The fact he's been thrown in at centre back, and Veltman.
Yeah,
is
Webster is injured,
average.
But Dan Byrne goes to Newcastle, and you write that story from an Irish point of view and say, well, this could be good news for Shane Duffy. But yeah, it has stalled a little bit. Injury has complicated in the last couple of weeks as well. But you would hope that if we're sitting here just before that international window in 2 weeks' time, and he still hasn't re-established himself in the Brighton team, given the paucity of options around him post Dan Byrne and the post Dan Byrne era,
they call it down in Brighton.
I think that's what they're calling it.
Wow. Post Dan Byrne era.
May you live in interesting times. You would be slightly concerned if he hasn't re-established himself, because one of the big successes of Kenny's reign last year, or the World Cup qualification campaign, was the effective rehabilitation of Duffy.
A couple of other defensive options. Again, he's not massively looking, but Omar Bamadele is injured and probably going to miss out on these games. John Egan is in, it seems, good form with Sheffield United, who just cannot concede a goal at the moment. Mark McGuinness and Joel Bagan are 2 guys at Cardiff who probably a little bit out of sight, out of mind, but 2 young players who are, got to think they're possibly in the mix for this squad. Yeah,
I mean, Stephen might have to ring Mick McCarthy to thank him for his work. Joel Bagan played underage, was born in England, played underage with Scotland, but declared for Ireland beginning of last year, I think. Jim Crawford rang Mick McCarthy and said, oh yeah, get him on board, you're getting a terrific player. And he's been playing regularly in the last couple of months. In a back 4 as far as I remember, but has been also scoring goals. He scored in 3 straight championship games earlier on this year. One absolutely terrific goal, I think, was against Coventry, I think, where he cut in and fired it into the far corner. So he's doing pretty well. You'd be surprised if he makes the squad, probably. I mean, he's probably more likely to stay with the 21s, but we're not exactly stocked with options at left wing back. I mean,
it certainly looked as though Enda Stevens a year, 18 months ago, that was his position for the foreseeable. He had a few injury problems as well, and now it felt as though McLean is probably
the eternal James McLean. People have been writing
season of his life.
People have been writing his international career obituary for a while. I remember he got sent off against Wales in the Nations League in Dublin, and I remember being asked, "Is that it now for James McLean's international career?" But it's not. He's going to get. He's going to push. You'd imagine he's going to push pretty close to 100 caps. He's on 70 odd now at the moment. And he's been playing really well for Wigan. Now, McLean, quite refreshingly this week, inverted the old Instagram apology by posting on Instagram and say, I have absolutely no apologies to make for being sent off against Fleetwood. I don't know. I
do love his Instagram. If you don't follow James McGrath on Instagram, you really should. His most impressive feat is that obviously he's playing League One, which, like the Championship, is Sunday, Tuesday, in 42 games. Yet still, every Tuesday night after he plays, he's up at 1 o'clock in the morning doing the most
incredible,
insane fitness regime.
It's absolutely remarkable. And he got into a bit of a tiff with Joe Garner. He used to play for Rangers with Fleetwood. What did McLean say? It was like he tried to kick me and drag me and do something else. He tried all 3, so I was going to stand my ground effectively. So he's going to miss the next 3 matches, but he has been playing in a very good Wigan team. Yeah, he scored again. He scored. Is it 8 goals, I think, this season? But he's been playing, he's been versatile for them as well. Has been left back in the back 4, has been left wing back, has played on the left wing and traditional attack as well. So he's had a great season, So you've got those 2, and Liam Scales probably for doing the depth chart for left wing back. So that's probably maybe Bagan will struggle to force his way in. Ryan Manning is there as well, but he's been repurposed as a centre back at Swansea.
Also, when he has had the chance with Ireland, really doesn't feel like it's worked out for him so far. So maybe he's a little bit down that depth chart. Looking at the midfielders, I know what the next couple of weeks is going to be about. It'll be the Jack Byrne hype train, particularly if he can follow up on the type of performance he put in on Monday night. And yes, maybe there is an opportunity even at that early stage, even though even listening to Jack Byrne and Steve Bradley feels maybe this
feels a bit early. I was going to ask, because you were at that game,
too early.
Like, do you think?
I think it's probably a little bit too early. Like, the quality is, like, there's no questioning the quality, but the fact he was taken off after 55 minutes because he had played on Friday suggests that, like, 4 games in about a year that he's played. So to suddenly get to international level in a month, it is difficult to tell the difference in standards. I was thinking afterwards of somebody like Alan Brown, who's playing, a year older than Jack Byrne, is playing every week in the Championship, and we never get excited about Alan Brown, no matter what he does. But Jack has these moments, and he's always looking to do something, and maybe that's his downfall as well. That every time he gets on, he's trying to maybe force the issue a little bit, and say he was frustrated with he gave the ball away a little bit too much, but also, like, the other side of it was the pass, and there was 3 or 4 of those.
Brilliant, like
the pass for Gannon for the first goal. There was a similar one for Andy Lyons, where Andy Lyons never made the run, and you could see he was at Andy Lyons because he knows actually all Andy Lyons needs to do is get in there once, and we have the exact same thing again. So he is already, it seems, several steps ahead of maybe anybody else. But in the League of Ireland.
But what you say there about him always trying to make something happen, that was actually kind of a criticism that Mick McCarthy used to have of him, that he used to come too deep. His thing was he wanted Jack further up the field and playing in that more number 10 position. Like the Ireland team, how they were set up last year, didn't really play with their traditional number 10, largely because they lacked them. They really didn't have those kind of players. Jamie McGrath came in and played off the left, I suppose, and could occasionally play deeper in midfield. So it would be interesting. If Jack is back playing regularly with Shamrock Rovers, he is an option. He's 100% an option for Ireland in that position. But you see, there are also others that are beginning to come to the fore. Conor Ronan. Ronan was, one of the main players for Kenny at under 21 level. You might remember he was brilliant. Was it Sweden at home? He was brilliant. And there was the clip went slightly viral. Great, drag back and skill to beat a man by the end line, and Troy Parrott reacted by putting his head in his hands. So Ronan was quite an important player then, but he kind of faded from the radar. He went to Grasshoppers in Switzerland, but he decided to join them in the
as well.
Yeah, they were in the Swiss second division. I remember Kenny talking about we're kind of disappointed at the level he's playing at, but he's at St Mirren now and is playing pretty well. He too was sent off recently, so he won't be playing against Celtic in their match coming up, but he's doing pretty well there as well. And Kenny name checked him last December as a player that they're very much keeping an eye on. So they're now, there are now options in that kind of central.
Will Smallbone's an interesting player. He's been around for a while, even though he's still under 21. He definitely looked like the class act in 21's last game, and he's had some health issues as well over the last couple of years. But he's always been in and around at Southampton. So he's at a good level. It does feel he's not far away from been very close to that team.
I think he's probably pretty close. The thing that would hold him back from being named in March is just probably not playing enough games. But he did start in midweek. He's a very, very talented midfielder. He had a really rough time. He ruptured his ACL and then suffered from alopecia at the same time. So, I think the alopecia was onset just before the injury. So he talked. I recommend people go back and dig out the interview. It's very interesting. He talks very openly about the slight trauma of seeing all of his hair fall out as he was recovering from this very, very serious injury that was stymieing his career. And he talked about the doctors don't know whether they were related. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But he's back on the pitch. His hair is growing back now as kind of further symbolism of the fact that he's working his way back to fitness. And Kenny has talked about him before as well. He talked about him, now it's going back to 2020, I think, and talked about just him needing physicality to get himself back in the mix. But he earned the praise of Ralph Hasenhüttl for his performance against West Ham in midweek. So if you can just string a few games together, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the mix.
A couple of other names that maybe are just below the radar. Danny McNamara, Marcus Harness. What's their story?
Again, 2 players that Kenny name checked as being on the radar last December. Marcus Harness, quite a memorable name. He was born in England, I think. He declared for Ireland back in Mick McCarthy's days. He's never been technically named in a squad by Kenny, but he was with the group around the Nations League game against Bulgaria at home in November. That's arguably the most memorable thing about that game. My God. It was another 0-0, believe it or not. But he's been playing pretty well for Portsmouth in League One. Like, he was originally a winger, but has been converted into like another number 10. Like, I mean, striker maybe of the Will Keane ilk, who drops deep and links play and can also play at right wing back. So he's been in reasonable goal scoring form as well. Scored in that great 3-3 comeback for Portsmouth against Fleetwood there at the weekend. And sorry, there was someone else that we mentioned.
Well, there is an option, just because we're short in time. There is a spot available, certainly if not in the starting 11, in or around it, with Adam Ida's injury in that attacking position. And I don't want to say Troy Parrott is a forgotten man because he's still only 20 and he's still a Tottenham player. He's only out in loan, but the hype has certainly died down around Troy Parrott. But actually, in the last month or so, the vibes coming out of MK Don seem to be really positive.
Yeah, the hype dying down is no bad thing. Like, he went on loan from Tottenham to Millwall, and Tottenham were very careful about managing the hype. Like, I remember once I was talking to a journalist who tried to arrange an interview with him at Millwall, and one of the things off the table, you're not allowed to ask about Harry Kane, because obviously Kane went to Millwall and then went back to Spurs. So that was managing the hype. Things kind of went off track for him a bit, but he's playing all the time now in League One with MK Dons. His numbers aren't amazing, like 3 goals and 3 assists this season, but Liam Manning, his manager, has been hailing his work ethic, which seems to have turned around in the last few weeks. He was sent off in a Papa John's pizza trophy competition, and Liam Manning kind of criticised his lack of maturity for that, but he's very much on track, and his work ethic is being praised at the moment. So
should we be concerned about the temperament of young Irish footballers?
I don't know.
Every second player's been sent off in the last couple of weeks.
You know, it shows that they care, I suppose. You know?
Though I am concerned that Troy Parrott has gone from being the boy wonder to suddenly becoming a typical Irish striker who, you know, works very hard but doesn't really score too many goals.
I know.
Quite a concerning development.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there is the Robbie Keane. Well, people drew like Robbie Keane comparisons because they played for Tottenham. Yeah. I think
they should have banned that comparison along with the Harry Kane comparison.
Harry Kane one,
Gav, thanks a million for coming in.
Cheers.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Get more of the sports you love on Sports Extra with BT Sport and Premier Sports.